Chapter 21 Little Rose's Plan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gavin took a deep breath, as if he wanted to inhale all the blood and gunpowder smoke that filled the battlefield into his lungs. He slowly turned around and looked at the three people charging with him. Although they managed to hold on and did not fall down, the wounds on their bodies were shocking, and blood continued to seep out, staining their clothes red. One of them had a bloody wound on his abdomen, while the other two had long bloody marks scratched by swords. Gavin turned his attention to the stadium again. After the chaos before the start, there were less than 100 people in the stadium at this time. The originally noisy and chaotic battlefield now seemed much empty. The people who are still here are roughly scattered into several forces. One of them is composed of the Hightower family as the core. Due to its effective initial defense, its strength is relatively intact and its morale has not decreased. The remaining groups have suffered more or less casualties. After the charge and fighting just now, Gavin had a clear understanding of his own strength for the first time. With his sophisticated armor and master swordsmanship, he could easily deal with any team on the field. He felt the power filling his muscles, containing endless potential. At this moment, although he had expended some energy, his body had not yet shown any signs of fatigue. On the contrary, he was becoming more and more comfortable under the stimulation of the battle. He turned around and waved to the three people, indicating that they could leave. Gavin watched his teammates leaving the field bend down to pick up the spear with the flag from the ground, adjusted his position, raised the spear upright, and walked slowly towards the Hightower family. There was confidence in his eyes, as if the enemies in front of him were just a swarm of ants waiting for him to conquer. The nobles in the stands also exploded at this time, and whispers continued one after another. Many people are curious about what on earth this young man is going to do. Does he want to attack the tightly united and prepared team of more than 10 people alone? Some people looked frightened, thinking that this young man was too reckless. Some people's eyes were shining, expecting him to create miracles, and some people looked disdainful, thinking that this was a foolish act of overestimating his capabilities. Edmund in the stands was as anxious as an ant on a hot pot, with big beads of sweat rolling down his forehead. He shouted Gavin's name at the top of his lungs, waving his hands in the air desperately, trying to get Gavin's attention. However, his anxious shouts were ruthlessly drowned out by the discussions among the nobles. At the same time, Vilas, who saw this scene, couldn't help but said to himself, "I didn't expect your swordsmanship to be so strong. I don't know how many surprises you can bring me." Marjorie Tyrell heard her brother talking to herself next to her, and curiously asked her brother, "Brother Willis, do you know him?" Willis touched Marjorie's head tenderly and said, "I met him at a banquet before. His name is Gavin Fourroy. He is a talented person in managing the territory. I want to drag him into the High Court. Take office." As he spoke, Vilas's eyes showed appreciation and expectation. "But a flower? Since he is not a knight yet, you can accept him as a squire." Marjorie blinked her big eyes and said seriously, her bright eyes full of curiosity. "Of course not. He is only 15 years old and has not yet passed his adult ceremony. How can there be such a young knight?" Vilas explained to Marjorie with a smile. After saying that, a trace of melancholy appeared helplessly on his face, and he sighed softly. "After seeing his swordsmanship, I also wanted to accept him as an attendant, but he is the illegitimate son of the Cotoin family." "I see, I understand." Marjorie frowned. "Oh. What do you understand?" Vilas asked with a smile. "His sister was raised by her grandmother since she was a child. Even though she is only 13 years old now, her wisdom and vision far exceed his. The only members of the Courtoin family are Earl Horton and Sir Edmund. Sir Edmund's wife of 7 years, Lilith Tyrell, is just pregnant. She is a member of the Tyrell family and is currently the third member of the family. This Gavin Buddha is the only male of this generation. Even if he is just an illegitimate child, he rashly proposed to bring the opponent's underage bloodline into the High Court, with the intention of standing up for Lilith. We cannot take the initiative to propose inclusion in the High Court. It is best for the other party to take the initiative." Marjorie answered patiently, then frowned and thought again when Vilas nodded in acknowledgement. After tilting her head and thinking for a while, Marjorie then revealed a sly smile on her face. "Brother Vilas, I have an idea that I should try." Vilas was very surprised when he heard it. He knew that Marjorie's way of handling affairs since she was a child was far better than him, and asked curiously, "What method?" "Tell me." Marjorie winked mischievously and said, "I can take the opportunity of the name day to make him my guardian knight. A noble lady's guardian knight is only honorary, so it will not irritate Sir Edmund. Yes, we can use this as an opportunity to let him stay in the high court afterwards." Vilas smiled helplessly and said, "You little clever guy, but you'd better ask your grandmother before making any decision." Marjorie raised her head proudly. "I understand, I saw the swordsmanship, it is indeed very strong, but it is better to put it to the test when managing the territory." Vilas looked at his sister, wondering what wonderful idea this smart sister had come up with. As Gavin advanced, there was silence all around, and no one stopped or attacked him. Apparently everyone was aware of the conflict between him and the Hightower family, and pairs of eyes focused on him, waiting to watch the show with different thoughts. With the strength he has shown before, if he really messes up the strict formation of the Hightower family, it will undoubtedly be a good thing for everyone present, except for some people who were so eager to kill. Most people had stopped, and were watching other teams vigilantly while quietly watching Gavin, as if waiting for a wonderful drama to be staged. Gavin held a spear and stood only 30 steps away from the Hightower family. Then he held the spear with both hands and thrust it deeply into the ground, forming a flag standing on the ground. Instantly, the whole audience exclaimed, "He didn't use the spearhead, how much power it takes." Seeing Gavin show such a terrifying power, the faces of the people in the Hightower family instantly became solemn. The originally relaxed atmosphere seemed to be frozen by frost, and the air seemed to become heavy and depressing. They held their weapons tightly, and looked at Gavin with vigilance and alertness in their eyes. They quickly adjusted their formation and waited for the battle. The tense atmosphere spread among the crowd, making people feel suffocated. Gavin's eyes instantly became extremely sharp, and his right hand tightly grasped the hilt of the long sword at his waist like an iron clamp, and pulled it out violently. The sword flashed with a frosty cold light, as if it was longing for blood. Chapter 22 Killing Dancer. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gavin kicked his legs hard, and rushed towards the strict formation of the Hightower family like thunder. The opponent's attack immediately came like a torrential rain and gust of wind, and 2 long spears stabbed at him fiercely. But Gavin's figure was like a phantom, and he quickly turned to the left to avoid the long spear stabbing from the side, and then he leaned back quickly to avoid another long spear stabbing from the front. In the blink of an eye, he had rushed into the opponent's formation, and the sword in his hand was swung out with the force of the wind. A cold light flashed, and a member of the Hightower family was pierced through the heart by Gavin's sword before he could react, and fell on the spot. Then, Gavin rushed towards the man holding the gun flag. The opponent was terrified and hurriedly raised his long spear to try to block it. Gavin's wrist turned quickly, and the sword bypassed the long spear like a spirit snake, and a sharp backstab was made. The man's throat was instantly cut open, and blood gushed out. At this time, another person attacked from the side. Gavin dodged sideways, kicked the man in the abdomen, and kicked him several meters away. Another enemy took the opportunity to attack from behind. Gavin seemed to have eyes on his back. He turned quickly and hit the man with the hilt of the sword. The man groaned and fainted on the ground. At this time, the allies of the Hightower family roared and quickly joined the battle. Gavin was not afraid at all. His eyes became more and more fierce, and the sword in his hand was swung tightly. Sometimes he stabbed out quickly, sometimes he picked up tricky, and sometimes he chopped down fiercely. Each move contained a great force. An enemy attacked fiercely from the left. Gavin turned sideways like the wind and slashed the opponent's arm with a backhand sword. Another enemy attacked from behind. He seemed to have eyes on his back. He turned quickly and stabbed the opponent's chest with his sword. Then, Gavin was like entering an empty space, with the shadow of the sword flashing. Some enemies had their arms cut off by his swift sword moves, and fell to the ground screaming. Some were killed instantly by his precise sword strike. His movements were as fast as lightning, and each move was deadly and fierce. in this chaotic battlefield, Gavin was like a peerless killer dancer. Each of his moves was swift and fierce, but full of deadly threats. His sword drew sharp arcs in the air, and each swing was accompanied by the enemy's screams. More than a dozen enemies surrounded him, but could not get close to him. His sword was like a mad dragon out of the sea, and like a violent tiger descending from the mountain, showing the peerless style of master-level swordsmanship, which made people terrified. Until Gavin's long sword slashed the throat of the last enemy, no one could stand in front of him. Where the Hightower family was just waiting for battle, only Gavin was left standing proudly. His chest rose and fell violently, he gasped, and sweat slid down his cheeks and dripped onto the blood-stained land. There was a dead silence all around, with only Gavin's heavy breathing and the occasional sound of the flags fluttering in the wind. The blood all over the ground and the bodies lying in disorder witnessed the thrilling battle just now. Gavin slowly stood up, the sword in his hand hanging at his side, and the blood on the tip of the sword dripped down. He looked around at the other opponents who were eyeing him covetously, without the slightest pity or fear on his face. He stretched out his hand and bent his fingers towards them, and the gesture was full of provocation and disdain. At the moment when Gavin made a provocative move, the entire stands and the crowd of onlookers were like an ignited gunpowder barrel, erupting with deafening, overwhelming and fierce sounds. People seemed to be driven by an invisible force, whispering madly, and exclamations, cheers, and doubts collided and intertwined like countless surging waves. Gavin felt that he was in better condition than ever before. Although he had already consumed a lot of physical strength, the fierce battle made him stronger. It seemed that he had truly mastered the master-level swordsmanship given by the panel before. Seeing that no one dared to respond to his provocation, he smiled and charged without hesitation. Facing Gavin's charge, some people tried to fight back at first, but as those who tried to fight back were knocked down. A very bizarre scene appeared in the entire arena. Wherever Gavin went, someone would immediately flee in panic or surrender directly. After a while, Gavin was the only one left on the field. In just a few days, Edmund had held 3 banquets, and the protagonist of each banquet was the same person. He had no intention of stopping, and had once again ordered the waiter to go shopping and prepare for the 4th banquet together. Unlike the excited Edmund, Gavin had long been overwhelmed by the banquet. After a polite toast, he hurriedly pretended to be drunk and left. After all, his mind was not on the banquet at all. Gavin, who quickly escaped from the banquet, went to harvest his achievements with excitement under the guidance of Tommen. "Sir, we can only give you 110,000 gold dragons in cash now. Please allow us 10 days to raise the remaining 40,000 gold dragons. The Chamber of Commerce has not kept enough gold dragons here. If you are worried, you can also collect some goods of equal value as collateral. In addition, we will also pay you 2,000 gold dragons as compensation to make up for our mistakes." The person who spoke lowered his head, his voice trembled slightly, his forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat, his hands were unconsciously twisted together, his eyes were full of uneasiness and anxiety, and he carefully observed the look of the adults in front of him. Gavin was quite helpless when he heard this, and frowned. Seeing that the other party's manager was sincere and did not seem to be going to default on the debt, he stood there, his eyes were deep, and he began to think. Seeing that Gavin didn't answer, the steward became even more uneasy, and his body couldn't help but tremble slightly, fearing that he would anger the killing god in front of him. He had also watched the previous duel, and the bloody scene still frightened him deeply. So he hurriedly said, "Sir, our Chamber of Commerce has been opening a dual betting business in Westeros for more than 200 years. Even the Iron Bank has a share. Please rest assured that the reputation is absolutely guaranteed, and our Chamber of Commerce has a wide range of business. We can help you find anything you need in the future." When he spoke, his voice was obviously trembling, and his eyes were full of pleading. Hearing this, Gavin suddenly remembered something in his heart and said, "It's not that I can't wait 10 days, but I have some materials to buy, and the prerequisite is that you can help me get them together." As he said, he asked the other party to bring paper and pen, and wrote down all the materials and medicines needed for the Blood Witch puppet. The steward looked at the list full of materials and medicines, and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He immediately said, "Sir, the Chamber of Commerce can get what you want now, but I don't know how many you need, and these things are not cheap. about 1,200 gold royals. But if you want, I can give you 1,000 gold royals to thank you for your understanding. Chapter 23 Making a Puppet. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But I need a lot, can you give it to me at this price? Gavin was a little embarrassed and said with a bit of embarrassment. I don't know how much you want, sir. If it's a large transaction, I'm afraid I can't make the decision. The steward said with an embarrassed look. After thinking for a while, Gavin replied, I want 50 copies of such materials. Well, sir, 50 copies is not a problem, but I'm afraid that your current inventory can't make up so many. I can only get you 7 copies in total. If there are some missing materials, I will immediately transfer them to you. We have a treasure house in the old town, and we will definitely deliver them to you before the end of the martial arts competition. The steward hurriedly replied. After seeing Gavin agreed, he called a servant and gave him a few instructions. He invited Gavin to sit down and said, Please sit down for a while, sir, the goods will be delivered later, and I will extract the gold dragons for you first. Gavin and Tommen led a carriage of the caravan and hurried back to the camp. As soon as they arrived, a group of soldiers who had been waiting for a long time helped to unload the boxes enthusiastically. Soon, 2 huge boxes were carefully unloaded into Gavin's tent. This time, Gavin brought back a full 100,000 gold dragons. Excluding the 30,000 gold dragons that Tommen and other soldiers deserved, Gavin alone had as many as 70,000 gold dragons. This was undoubtedly a staggering amount of money, and the amount was so huge that it was enough to make everyone look at it sideways. After putting the box containing 30,000 gold dragons in the open space in front of the tent, Gavin found a few veterans with high prestige to organize the money distribution. Many soldiers who won the bet immediately gathered together and happily divided the money. Their faces flushed with extreme excitement, and everyone's face was filled with irrepressible joy. The corners of their mouths were raised high, revealing an extremely bright smile, and they kept saying some words praising Gavin. Gavin, who had obtained the materials, had an eager light in his eyes at this moment, and he couldn't wait to experiment with the Blood Witch puppet. It happened that a gladiator who competed with him in the morning died of serious injuries and eventually bled to death. Remembering what he asked Tommen to inquire before departure, Gavin pulled Tommen aside with a solemn look and asked in a low voice, What did the other party answer about the question I asked you to ask just now? I have already asked those 2 captains. The 3 of them just happened to be hired together. The dead gladiator was not a companion of those 2. They said they would not take the body away and asked us to help bury it. Tommen answered quickly. After hearing this, Gavin couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief and said slowly, You go find a carriage later. After all, we fought side by side. It's better for me to bury him personally. When Tommen heard this, his face was instantly filled with surprise, and he said with admiration, Captain, just let me do these things, why bother you to do it yourself? After hearing this, Gavin shook his head slightly, without too much explanation, but ordered in a firm tone, Do as I say, tell me immediately when you are ready, and do it tonight. After hearing this, although Tommen was full of doubts in his heart, he did not question Gavin's decision, so he bowed his head and responded, and then turned around and hurried to prepare. Watching Tommen's departing back gradually disappear from his sight, Gavin turned around without the slightest hesitation and strode into the tent, and began to race against time to prepare the materials needed for the ceremony. Late at night, everything was quiet. Gavin drove a carriage alone to the depths of an uninhabited forest with the help of the faint moonlight and the flickering torch in his hand. He found some reasons, refused Tommen's help and companionship, and came here alone with the body. The dead gladiator was called Dacio, who was the one who used the scimitar in the previous competition with Gavin. Dacio was agile, very flexible, and very fast, but unfortunately he died here. For a generous reward and bonus, Gavin took off all of Dacio's clothes, and a deep wound that pierced the abdomen appeared in front of him. The wound was hideous and terrifying, and blood and flesh were blurred. Obviously, this was the fatal cause of his death. With the flickering light of the torch, Gavin began to draw runes on the body. He was fully focused and careful, fearing that there would be a slight mistake, and even sweat beads had appeared on his forehead. Finally, after 2 tense hours, Gavin finished the rune carving. After checking again and again and making sure there were no omissions, Gavin breathed a sigh of relief and wiped the sweat from his head. Then, he took the simple blood transfusion device prepared in advance from the carriage. This is a device made of a flexible cowhide water bag filled with liquid medicine and a thick cow blood vessel. Compared with the infusion tube that Gavin used in his previous life, it is extremely crude and crude. In Gavin's previous life, if such a crude device was used to treat the disease, the patient would probably die faster. Fortunately, this is a world full of mysterious magic. Its role is only to temporarily replace the blood wizard's ability to control blood, so as to help Gavin achieve the purpose of blood transfusion. At this time, the sky has turned a faint fish belly white, but Gavin, who has not slept all night, is more energetic and not sleepy at all. After the medicine was almost injected, he pulled out the dagger without hesitation and cut his wrist. Instantly, a large amount of blood flowed into the water bag like a flood. Gavin silently calculated the dosage and endured the strong dizziness caused by the rapid blood loss. Finally, after feeling that the amount of blood was sufficient, Gavin quickly took out a small bottle filled with liquid medicine from his arms, dripped his own blood into it, shook it briefly a few times, and drank it all. Amazingly, the wound on the wrist healed at an astonishing speed visible to the naked eye. In less than a minute, the wound on the wrist was completely healed, and there was not even a scar left. Looking at the effect of this magical potion, Gavin couldn't help but feel a lot of emotion in his heart. It was a pity that once the blood-containing magic power was added, the shelf life of the potion could only last for a short 30 minutes, otherwise he would have made more for backup. Gavin stared at the slow infusion of blood, praying silently in his heart. Given the current state of the magic tide at this time, coupled with the opportunistic method he used, he actually lacked confidence in whether this ceremony could succeed. Suddenly, a large amount of black blood suddenly gushed out of Dacio's wound, which was a clear sign of a successful blood exchange. Gavin hurriedly placed his hand on the chest of the corpse, concentrating and waiting for the moment when the black blood stopped flowing. Chapter 24 Banquet. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Finally, the black blood stopped flowing out, and Gavin quickly injected magic power into the runes. The horrific wounds on the corpse began to heal at a jaw-dropping speed, and after just a few moments, they were as good as before. Dacio, who had been dead all night, slowly opened his eyes, revealing pupils as scarlet as blood. Gavin was so excited that he couldn't restrain his inner excitement and immediately ordered loudly, "Stand up." That the corpse slowly stood up. Gavin couldn't wait to open the panel. After looking at the note on the panel that asked to name the unknown creature, he thought for a moment and named it Blood Dragon Guard. Host, Gavin Buddha Flower. Age, 15. Bloodline, Bloodfire Dragonborn. Development 33% Valyria's Dragon King Bloodline, Mastering Dragons, and Controlling Fire. Initially awakened. Rule, 0.1 out of 33. Your slaves can be promoted through the panel. 0.1 Junior Blood Dragon Guard. The blood which puppet made using the blood of Dragonborn can be advanced twice. Skill, Fire. Manipulation, Master, Swordsmanship, Master, Flame Blade. Proficient, Bow and Arrow, Mastery. Spear, Mastery. Energy points, 1, obtained by automatically absorbing magic power floating around, or actively absorbing magic power. Gavin clicked on the Junior Blood Dragon Guard on the panel. Type, Blood Dragon Guard. Level, Junior. Ability, Julie. Ultimate Strength, Rapid Self-Healing. Consumes magic power to heal wounds quickly. Combat skills, possess 50% of the Master's combat skills. Gavin first carefully studied the introduction and abilities of Blood Dragon Guard, and then he couldn't wait to test it. Gavin first handed the sword he had prepared in advance to the Blood Dragon Guard, and then ordered him to attack him. 2 minutes later, under Gavin's order, the Blood Dragon Guard stopped attacking, and Gavin also tested the effect. His pure strength is far stronger than his own, but he is slightly inferior in combat swordsmanship and other aspects, but he does reach the level of half of the swordsman masters introduced in the panel. Later, Gavin used his sword to cause wounds of varying degrees on the Blood Dragon Guard, and ordered him to perform rapid healing. In less than a minute, all the wounds on Blood Dragon Guard's body were healed, and the healing speed was visible to the naked eye. Gavin carefully felt the changes in the Blood Dragon Guard's magic power and found that the more serious the wound, the greater the consumption of magic power. After the test, Gavin was extremely satisfied with the performance of the Blood Dragon Guard. He endured his heartache and added the few energy points he had to the Blood Dragon Guard. In an instant, the Blood Dragon Guard changed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Its skin quickly became tighter, and its muscles became significantly larger, far more burly than before. Gavin watched as the Blood Dragon Guard in front of him came towards him with a fierce momentum. Gavin quickly checked the Blood Dragon Guard's panel, type, Blood Dragon Guard, level, intermediate. Ability, great strength, ultimate power under the blessing of ritual, rapid self-healing, consumes magic power to heal wounds quickly, combat skills, possess 60% of the master's combat skills. Tough skin, the skin is extremely tough and has a certain degree of defense. After studying the panel, Gavin immediately repeated the previous test on the upgraded Blood Dragon Guard. Compared with just now, the strength of the intermediate Blood Dragon Guard has been significantly improved, and the ability of tough skin has also been added. Gavin scratched it a few times with his sword and found that the defensive strength of its skin was no less than that of leather armor. At this time, the sky was slightly brighter. Gavin handed the clothes and weapons he had prepared in advance to the Blood Dragon Guard, ordered him to put them on, and then let him hide deep in the woods. Then Gavin drove the carriage slowly towards the camp. It was daybreak when Gavin returned to camp. He stayed up all night, and although he was slightly tired, he could not hide the excitement brought about by the huge harvest this night, but when he stepped into the tent, sleepiness suddenly hit him. Gavin just wanted to throw himself on the bed and fall into a sweet dream. However, fate seemed not to let him have his wish. The curtain of the tent was suddenly opened, and Edmund's figure walked in. Edmund looked at the exhausted Gavin, smiled and said, "I heard that you personally buried the dead gladiator last night." Gavin immediately replied, "Yes, sir. After all, he fought alongside me. I think it would be better for me to bury him myself. You don't have to work yourself so hard next time. That gladiator is just a desperado trying to earn commissions. From now on, just let the soldiers handle this kind of thing." After saying that, Edmund looked casually outside the tent. The ground waved. Immediately afterwards, 2 more people walked in quickly from outside the tent. Edmund turned to look at Gavin again, with a bit of concern in his eyes, and said, 2 days later there will be a banquet for the Tyrell family. Willis invited you, won't you forget? In my opinion, I'm afraid you don't have a suitable dress, so let them measure you quickly. After Gavin thanked Edmund for his kindness, he could only hold back his sleepiness and cooperated with the 2 tailors to measure him. The tailors moved skillfully, moving the measuring tape quickly on Gavin's body, and whispered the measurement data from time to time. Just when Gavin felt that his eyelids were beginning to fight, finally, the measurement was over. Gavin seemed to have been drained of the last bit of strength. He lay down on the bed and soon fell asleep. 2 days later in the evening, Edmund led Gavin, who was wearing a new dress, to the High Court. This was Gavin's first time entering the interior of Highgarden Castle, and he was instantly attracted by the beautiful scenery in front of him. The entire castle is made of snow-white stone, with a soft glow in the evening glow. Stepping into it, it feels like being in a huge garden, with lush green trees, colorful flowers, and bursts of fragrance. Birds sing on the branches, and the crisp chirping echoes in the air. They walked through a long corridor and came to the door of the banquet hall. After seeing Edmund, the waiter standing outside the door bowed his head and bowed respectfully, saying, "Please wait, sir." Then he turned and entered the banquet hall, and then there was a loud roll call. "Lord Edmund Cotoin from the Cotoin family is here." After hearing the roll call, Edmund turned around and showed Gavin a meaningful smile, and said with a smile, "Let's go, maybe you will have other gains today." Then, without waiting for Gavin to ask, he turned and walked into the banquet hall. Although Gavin was puzzled, he didn't think much about it and could only follow closely. After entering the banquet hall, they saw Willis coming to greet them. After the 2 sides greeted each other, Edmund asked Willis, "Where is the Duke of Mace? Please allow me to go and meet him." Willis smiled and said, "My father has been waiting for you. Please let me take you this way." After that, Willis looked at Gavin behind Edmund and showed a meaningful smile and said, "Relax and walk around. If you are hungry, there is food at the table on the left. You can also call the waiter if you need anything." Enjoy it. After that, he led Edmund to meet the Duke of Mace. Chapter 25 Little Rose. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The strange expressions of the two people made Gavin puzzled, and he couldn't even guess what their intentions were. However, Gavin, who couldn't think of anything else, decided to do something serious first, fill his stomach, and then walk towards the dining table piled with food. Gavin soon understood why they had such strange expressions. Originally, he was enjoying the delicious food leisurely, but not long after, a group of young ladies came to talk to him. Their words to each other made Gavin overwhelmed and anxious. There were even a few ladies who spoke quite openly. Their bold and direct words made Gavin blush for a moment, and he didn't know how to answer. Just when Gavin was at a loss, fortunately, Duke Mace Tyrell on the high seat raised a cup and gave a speech, which interrupted Gavin's chaotic situation and rescued Gavin, who was in trouble. Taking this opportunity, he quickly packed some food and quietly walked out of the courtyard. In the courtyard, although it was already evening, the lights were brightly lit. The moonlight is like water, shining in the courtyard, blending with the bright lights. The surrounding woods are lush, the breeze blows, and the leaves rustle, as if whispering the secrets of the night. The flowers bloom in the light and shadow, colorful and exuding charming fragrance. A gust of breeze blew by, bringing a bit of coolness. Gavin felt very comfortable here. Gavin walked towards the chair under the tree in the distance, sat there and started eating, feeling angrily in his heart. No wonder you are looking at me like that. Edmund didn't know to give me a heads up. Hello sir, this is the first time we meet. I am Marjorie Tyrell. Just when Gavin was about to complete his original goal, a female voice as beautiful as the cry of a nightingale sounded from behind him. Gavin quickly turned around and saw a little girl of 13 or 14 coming behind him. She has straight brown hair, a delicate face like a finely carved jade, and a pair of big eyes that are clear and bright, shining with a smart light. Gavin quickly put down the plate and bowed. Hello, Miss Marjorie, this is the first time we meet. My name is Gavin Fourroy. In his previous life, Gavin liked the role of Little Rose very much when watching the show. She made every move on the chessboard without making a mistake, and she had the upper hand in the battle with the Queen Mother Cersei. However, she did not expect that Cersei would overturn the chessboard in the end. Thinking of the death of Little Rose at that time, Gavin felt quite sorry. The puzzled Gavin looked at the Little Rose in front of him and asked puzzledly, "This is a banquet held for your name day. As the protagonist, why are you here? Can I call you Gavin?" Marjorie did not respond to Gavin's question, but asked with a smile. "Of course," Gavin replied. "Then Gavin, why are you here?" Little Rose showed a gloating expression. Gavin, who understood the expression, said helplessly, "Miss Marjorie, you must have seen it just now." Marjorie sat gently on the chair opposite Gavin, swinging her legs slightly, supporting her arms on the stool, stretching her head and making a naughty expression at Gavin. "I have the same attitude as you, Gavin. Troubles." After finishing speaking, the two looked at each other and smiled. "You can also call me Marjorie. There is no need to use the honorific. I have seen your team competition, and it was really exciting. You must practice swordsmanship very hard, right?" "I can't say hard work, but I do practice diligently every day." After saying that, Gavin also sat down. Marjorie sighed helplessly. "Although Highgarden holds martial arts competitions every time, this time it happens to be my name day, so my father has spent a lot of money on it." After hearing this, Gavin showed a trace of doubt in his heart, but he still complimented, "Maybe it's a bit extravagant, but this just represents the Duke of Metz's love for you. I guess family is very important in the heart of the Duke of Metz. To have such a you must be very happy as a father." After hearing this, Marjorie first smiled and then sighed softly, and whispered, "Actually, Highgarden holds a martial arts competition every year, which is somewhat helpless. You must have heard about the situation in the Reach." Gavin certainly knew that the Tyrell family had poor control over the Reach. After thinking about it, he responded cautiously, "I've heard about it, but didn't dare to say more." After hearing this, Marjorie smiled and said, "It's okay Gavin. In fact, everyone in the Reach knows that the Tyrell family does not have very strong control over the Reach. Holding a tournament to promote chivalry is also to maintain the majesty of the monarch. It's a way. After a pause, he said helplessly, although the family is very wealthy, holding competitions every year not only costs a lot of money, but also makes the security of High Court very poor. If the money can be used to build the territory, that's even better. Gavin was very surprised when he heard Marjorie's words. Based on his knowledge, how could holding such a grand party in his own territory not make money, but would instead cost a lot of money? Then he asked curiously, didn't the Tyrell family gain any benefit from this tournament? The bonus alone and the various entertainment expenses for the nobles add up to no less than 20,000 gold dragons. Gavin, do you think holding a martial arts tournament can bring benefits? Marjorie opened her eyes wide and looked at her with curiosity. Gavin. Don't you charge taxes? Gavin asked curiously. Collected, it's just the tax collected by the tax official, which is far from enough to meet the expenses. Marjorie said helplessly. After hearing this, Gavin curiously asked Margaret about the specific tax collection method. After listening to Margaret's explanation, Gavin instantly understood the problem. There were too many people, and various caravans were swarming in. Unfortunately, the terrain of the river bay was flat and well connected. There were countless roads leading to or passing through Highgarden. When the caravans gathered at the foot of Highgarden, it was difficult for the tax officials to collect taxes in the chaotic, crowded and scattered market, causing countless merchants to conceal their reports. After a little thought, Gavin explained casually. In fact, there are many ways to make money by holding such a tournament. For example, the simplest commercial tax can be classified and planned in advance for several large commercial streets, and tents in the Tyrell family's inventory can be used to build camps around the commercial streets in advance. In this way, the tax officer only needs to identify the goods entering the commercial street, and then he can collect taxes according to the quantity and type of goods. This prevents most commercial activities from escaping supervision. As long as there is supervision on the commercial side, merchants will naturally not be able to escape paying taxes. And those camps outside can also charge a certain amount of rent. Marjorie looked at Gavin, her eyes full of surprise and admiration. She didn't expect that the problem that had plagued the Tyrell family for a long time was solved so easily by Gavin. Chapter 26 Night. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Her eyes revealed an unconcealable joy. Her expectant eyes focused on Gavin again, and then she asked with a bit of coquettishness, Gavin, you just said a lot of ways. Can you tell me in detail? Margaret's tone made Gavin's cheeks flush instantly. He hurriedly smiled, trying to hide the embarrassment that surged up at that moment, and said. There are indeed many ways. For example, the Tyrell family can completely ban all gambling games, only retain the most powerful ones, collect and supervise all bets, so that the other party's income can be clearly identified and gambling taxes can be collected appropriately. And the gamblers know that it is the Tyrell family that collects and guarantees the safety of the gambling money, and they will be more assured to place bets. And the public security problems caused by the collapse of gambling games and running away with money every year can also be solved together. Seeing that Gavin easily proposed another solution, Margaret reacted slightly from her shock. Recalling her eager tone of coquettishness just now, and looking at Gavin's handsome face, her face couldn't help but blush. But think about it, if she can get these good strategies by being coquettish, it's nothing. Then, she immediately used the same trick again. The two talked for a long time until a maid ran to Margaret eagerly and said, Miss, why are you here? Go back to the banquet quickly, the cake is here, and Lord Mace is looking for you. After hearing the maid's report, Margaret did not answer, but stood up and bowed to Gavin. She made a decision in her heart and invited with a smile, Gavin, come in with me, let me cut a piece of cake for you, thank you for helping me with advice. After hearing this, Gavin stood up and returned the greeting, then I'll trouble you, Margaret. The two quickly returned to the banquet hall. At this time, in the hall, a 13-layer cake had been pushed to the middle of the venue. The Duke of Metz saw his daughter coming in and waved to her, saying lovingly, come on, Margaret, it's your turn to cut the cake. Then Margaret walked to the cake, bowed to her father, took the knife handed over by the waiter, and cut the cake. The waiters carried small plates to divide the cake and gave it to the guests who attended the banquet. A moment later, the Duke of Metz took Margaret, who had just cut the cake, to the high platform and said, "To celebrate my daughter's 13th name day." After that, he drank the wine in a glass in one gulp. Suddenly, Margaret bowed respectfully to the Duke of Metz and said, "Father, I want a gift." After that, the scene was quiet, and everyone focused their eyes on the high platform. Duke of Metz asked curiously, "My daughter, what do you want?" Margaret first glanced at the people in the field, then looked at her father and said, "Father, I hope to get a guardian knight." Hearing this, Duke of Metz laughed and said to the people in the field, "Is there any good boy willing to be my daughter's guardian knight?" In an instant, the field was boiling, and countless people volunteered. Seeing this, Margaret bowed to the people in the field, and then looked at her father and said, "Father, can I choose and confer one myself?" After hearing this, Duke of Metz said cheerfully, "Of course, it seems that my daughter has already chosen someone in her mind." Then he drew the sword from his waist and handed it to Margaret. "Use my sword to confer it." Margaret took the long sword and took 2 steps forward. Everyone in the field showed expectant eyes, but Gavin found that Margaret was looking at him, and he couldn't help but feel a little expectant in his heart. Sure enough, Margaret's next words confirmed Gavin's guess. "Gavin Flowers, please come forward." Hearing Marjorie calling him, Gavin walked forward without hesitation. Soon, the two stood facing each other. Marjorie looked at Gavin in front of her and said seriously, "Gavin, you can now think of a new surname for yourself." Bellerys. Gavin chose his mother's surname without hesitation. "Please kneel down." Gavin immediately knelt on one knee after hearing Marjorie's request. Marjorie raised the long sword with a little effort and gently placed it on Gavin's shoulder. "I, Marjorie Tyrell, in the name of the daughter of Duke Mace Tyrell, appoint Gavin Bellerys as my guardian knight. In the name of a warrior, I ask you to be brave. In the name of the Father, I ask you to be fair. In the name of the Virgin, I ask you to protect the weak." Then Marjorie put down the long sword. "Get up, Gavin Bellerys, Knight of the 7 Kingdoms. In Westeros, knights have entered the quasi-aristocratic class. However, according to the treatment, knights are also divided into different levels. The highest is undoubtedly the property knights, who will own a village or manor. Although they have no right to make laws in the territory, they enjoy the taxes in the territory. The second is some paid knights, who serve under the loyal feudal lords and their lives are also supported by the lords. Finally, there are some people who simply have the status of knights, mostly oath knights and honor knights. The former only needs to abide by the oath made when canonizing, and the situation is different due to different oaths. If the knight's status is simply canonized, he will be canonized as a Knight of the 7 Kingdoms at the end of the canonization, but Gavin's situation is slightly different. When Margaret canonized Gavin, she did not let Gavin make any oaths, but simply canonized him as a Knight of the 7 Kingdoms, but the way of canonization was unique to her guardian knight. The canonization of an unmarried noble girl as a guardian knight is mostly a formal symbol, and the knight only needs to protect her reputation. If no special oath was made at the time of canonization, after the girl gets married, the guardianship responsibility will automatically be transferred to her husband, and the original knight will become a free knight. Although Gavin's guardian knight is of an honorary nature, it is still recognized by the law of Westeros. From then on, when civilians saw him, they had to address him as Sir or Sir. He had the right to recruit followers and build armies, and he also had the right to apply for a development order. After the canonization, they returned to the courtyard. Gavin and Marjorie, holding a small plate of cake in their hands, strolled into the courtyard just now. Gavin looked at the girl beside him and thanked, "Thank you, Miss Marjorie." "You're welcome, Lord Gavin." Marjorie teased. After saying that, the two looked at each other and smiled. The two of them slowly walked to the tree just now, and Marjorie asked, "Gavin, what are your future plans? Do you want to stay in the High Court?" After thinking for a while, Gavin replied seriously, "I plan to travel to the continent of Essos." "Gavin, then I wish you all the best." Marjorie hesitated to say anything but gave her last lost blessing. Chapter 27, Swordsmanship Instruction. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As if he guessed her purpose, Gavin said softly, if you encounter problems, you can write to me. Letters will not affect our exchange of ideas. The two chatted silently for a long time until the banquet was over. Marjorie walked to the tower where her grandmother lived with light steps. She climbed up the stairs, knocked gently on the old wooden door, and after receiving the answer, she slowly walked in. Inside the house, a thin old man came into view. Olenna has silver hair and is short. The headscarf on her head highlights her solemnity. Her weather-beaten face was covered with deep wrinkles, but her eyes were shrewd and sharp, as if she could see through everything. She was none other than Olenna, the Queen of Thorns. Olenna first glanced at Marjorie and said, "Are you done with the nonsense?" Marjorie smiled and stuck out her tongue playfully, then walked to the chair next to the mistress and sat down, snuggling affectionately on her shoulder. Olenna added, "My stupid son, when your father will mature, he will cooperate with you in your nonsense. Even if that kid is a talent, your brother should be allowed to come forward." "Tell me why you changed your mind," Marjorie hurriedly said. "He is very strong in swordsmanship and has many good suggestions for the management of the territory." After hearing this, Olenna snorted coldly. "The Sword of Dawn is also very strong, but he did not protect Targaryen. As for the territory, the Tyrell family is not short of money, but you are the jewel of Highgarden. It's not worth the loss of reputation caused by your personal canonization. Just tell the truth, kid." Marjorie's heart tightened after hearing this, and she didn't know how to answer for a while. Olenna sighed helplessly and said, "I was also young. A young, handsome, and well-spoken boy with superb swordsmanship is indeed very attractive, but in the end we will all be helpless for the sake of our family, so return to reason, child." Seeing that Marjorie lowered her head and said nothing, Olenna gently held Marjorie's hand and said softly, "My child, you will marry a prince or a king in the future, and become a queen. This is your goal, not love." Gavin followed Edmund and slowly walked towards the castle along the way he came. The night was as clear as water, and the breeze blew gently. Suddenly, two figures came towards Gavin in front of him. They were Randyll Tarly and his son Dickon Tarly. Randyll Tully's face was very serious. His brows were slightly furrowed and his eyes were looking straight ahead. His entire facial muscles were tense, without any relaxation or softness, giving people a feeling of being unapproachable and cold and serious. In contrast, his son Dickon's face was full of eagerness and desire. Earl Tully greeted Edmund calmly, and Edmund asked with confusion, "Earl Randyll, is there something wrong?" Randyll Tully shook his head, glanced at Dickon beside him, and said lightly, "I'm sorry to bother you, I have nothing to do. This is my son Dickon, and he hopes to get to know Knight Gavin." Dickon hurriedly stepped forward and bowed slightly to show respect to Edmund. Then he looked at Gavin with expectant eyes and said, "This is the first time we meet, Knight Gavin. I have watched your competition. Can you please teach me how to swordsmanship? I am willing to pay for it." Gavin frowned and said apologetically, "I'm afraid not. After participating in the martial arts tournament, I have to travel, and I'm afraid I don't have that much time." Dickon stamped his feet anxiously and said quickly, "Then before the competition is over, can you guide me for a while?" Gavin thought for a while, looked at Landau aside, and said calmly, "Yes, but the reward is not necessary. I have a request, if Earl Landau can agree." Randyll Tully was quite surprised, raised his eyebrows, and asked, "What's the request?" Gavin said solemnly, "I heard that the family sword of the Tully family is a Valyrian steel sword. I am a sword lover and admire this famous sword very much. I hope that while coaching Dickon in swordsmanship, he allowed me to use Broken Heart." Landau nodded slightly, but did not show the slightest expression. He just nodded and agreed, "Yes, your swordsmanship has not insulted my family sword. Tomorrow you can come to my family camp to teach my son. In that case, it's settled." Gavin smiled and bowed slightly. In the camp, Gavin, who was lying on the bed, breathed a long sigh of relief and opened his panel. Sure enough, the name of the host had been changed to Gavin Bellerys. The panel was really updated in real time. He proposed to use the Heartbreaker sword just for testing. Does the Valyrian steel sword contain magic power? If so, it can be listed as a search target to obtain energy points in the future. The next day, Gavin arrived at the Tully family camp early. Randyll Tarly first introduced his eldest son, Samwell Tarly, to him, and expressed the hope that his eldest son would also study together. After Gavin agreed without hesitation, he got the heartbreak he had longed for. The moment he held the sword, he felt the magic power surging inside the sword, which was as rich as the dragon bone pendant. He couldn't help but think to himself, it seems that in addition to dragon bones, Valyrian steel can also provide me with magic power. Gavin roughly estimated the absorption speed, and he realized that it might take 7 or 8 days to hold the sword in his hand. The magic power is absorbed. Therefore, in order to absorb the magic power in the sword as quickly as possible, the two students suffered a lot. Gavin doubled his daily training time. The extremely harsh training methods make them dare not slack off even if they are exhausted and sweating profusely every day. Randyll Tarly would take time out every day to come and watch for a while. After a few days, he found that Dickon's swordsmanship had improved at a visible speed. Even Samwell, who he did not like, was still the same temper, but he was much thinner and his swordsmanship was barely good enough. Randyll noticed that Gavin's explanations were detailed and easy to understand, and his training was quite strict and serious. He was very attentive when teaching his son swordsmanship, and even took the initiative to extend the teaching time. He had an attitude of not giving up until he was taught well. Compared with him, he admired him very much. He invited Gavin to dinner every day and also taught him some of his leadership experience. Until the jousting began, Gavin finally gained 3 energy points, and this heartbreaker steel sword seemed to be able to automatically absorb the free magic power to recover. Although the speed was a bit slow, this discovery made Gavin more eager to obtain a weapon made of Valyrian steel. Among all the jousting competitions in Westeros, only the jousting always occupies the highest position. Whether it is the entry threshold or the expensive cost, civilians are excluded. The champion will also be eligible to present the honor of Queen of Love and Beauty to a lady present. Chapter 28 The Missing Coben. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It should be noted that it will become a scandal if the champion gives the crown representing the honor to a woman who already has a family, or if the champion is married but does not give the crown to his wife. Prince Rhaegar's act of awarding the crown to Lyanna Stark caused great controversy and triggered a series of subsequent events. With his superb spear skills, Gavin was unstoppable and easily entered the finals, becoming one of the eye-catching dark horses in this jousting competition. What is quite interesting is that in the first game he entered, he met Garth Hightower, nicknamed Grey Iron. Perhaps in order to save the face of the Hightower family, Garth stabbed Gavin's vital part with his spear, but Gavin easily dodged it. After the two sides broke off 2 spears, Gavin shot Garth in the armpit, causing his entire arm to become dislocated. It may take several months for him to recover. In the finals, Gavin met another dark horse, Garland Tyrell, who was participating in the jousting for the first time. He was Marjorie's brother. Even if Gavin takes the challenge seriously, both sides are still evenly matched in terms of marksmanship. After Gavin interrupted 5 spears in a row, he was lucky enough to knock the opponent off his horse. The fallen Garland did not admit defeat. Instead, he took the sword and shield from the attendant and expressed his intention to continue to Gavin, who was on the horse. Gavin also immediately dismounted and took his sword, and the two of them fought together instantly. However, under the master-level swordsmanship, Garland only lasted 5 moves before being defeated. Gavin won the championship without any surprise. After looking at the laurel wreath woven with roses in his hand, Gavin couldn't help but think of the dead Prince Rhaegar. It was the laurel wreath he won that led to the country's downfall. He didn't know if he would regret it when he died. He shook his head and threw it away. Get rid of distracting thoughts. Gavin walked straight to the stands and gave the title of Queen of Love and Beauty to Marjorie Tyrell, who was sitting on the stage. Marjorie, who received the garland, was also very excited, and her face also showed a touch of red. Although she had seen countless jousting contests and experienced many similar scenes, this was the first time she had received this honor. Looking at Gavin in the audience, Marjorie felt a little sad. It would be great if he was really a prince. The end of the jousting tournament announced the end of the entire tournament in the Reach. The nobles began to pack their bags and prepare to return. The merchants who gathered here because of this event also slowly moved to other places. After saying goodbye to Sir Edmund, Gavin came to Highgarden Castle and planned to say goodbye to Marjorie. There is still the flowery courtyard, the breeze blows gently, and the colorful petals fall leisurely. Gavin saw Marjorie waiting here, with surprise and sadness in her eyes. Gavin bowed slightly and saluted. Marjorie flicked her skirt in return, and both parties said hello to each other. I will be leaving Highgarden later, and I came here to say goodbye to you, Miss Marjorie. Gavin looked at Marjorie and said softly. A hint of disappointment flashed across Marjorie's pretty face, and she said eagerly, Gavin, are you really not planning to serve in the High Court? Gavin shook his head slightly. I still have some things to do. I will visit you again when I come back. Marjorie bit her lip gently and said with a smile, then I wish you a pleasant journey, and be sure to take care of yourself when you are outside. I look forward to your coming again. Her eyes followed Gavin closely, as if she wanted to keep his image deep in your mind. The surrounding flowers swayed gently in the breeze, seeming to whisper the sadness of parting. Gavin came lightly dressed and only brought a sword, but after a martial arts tournament, he gained a lot. A carriage was loaded with his loot and 3 huge boxes were stacked on top. The heavy weight made the carriage difficult to move. The Blood Dragon guard held the reins tightly in front and controlled the speed of the carriage. Looking at the big boxes, Gavin frowned slightly and thought to himself, fortunately, he replaced the golden dragon with a golden ticket in advance, otherwise a carriage would not be able to pull it. After a while, he would have to prepare the materials in advance, so that he could save a lot of space and weight. Along the way, the sound of horse hooves and the creak of wheels were intertwined. Gavin, who had been walking like this for more than 10 days, did not encounter any trouble, which was a pity for him. Returning to the old town again, he planned to make some preparations here and get some magic knowledge from Bachelor Qyburn before going out. The streets of the old town were still bustling, and Gavin shuttled through them. Soon he came to the hotel where he had stayed before, opened a room, stored everything in the room, and ordered the Blood Dragon guard to guard it, and then headed to the school city. Bachelor Qianben was expelled from the city. When did it happen? Gavin was very surprised when he heard the news. Unexpectedly, Coben would be exposed less than a month after he left. I don't know if this is the time when Qyburn was expelled from the Citadel in the original plot, or is it the butterfly effect caused by him coming to this world. Just 10 days ago, the city discovered that he was secretly doing some inhumane experiments, so it deprived him of his bachelor's chain and kicked him out. Fortunately, you left. If you had still studied with him at that time, you would have it will be investigated, and the time to create the chain may be postponed. Bachelor Mishu also lamented Gavin's luck. Gavin took out a few golden dragons from his arms and handed them to Bachelor Mishu. I wonder if you know where Qyburn went after he was expelled from the school. Master Mishu skillfully put the golden dragon into his pocket and thought for a while, then said, I heard that he was active in the Port Street area, treating the injuries of the mercenaries who came and went to make money. Thinking that Gavin was reluctant to give up Coben's knowledge, Mishu hurriedly said, but don't worry, I can arrange other bachelors for you. If you have any ideas, you can tell me. Gavin shook his head and said, no need, Master Mishu, in fact, I am here this time to resign as an assistant bachelor. I plan to go out and travel. That's a pity, Gavin, your medical level is very good. But your situation happens every year. If you really decide, I will help you with the procedures. Then trouble you, Master Mishu. Gavin said politely. After leaving the academy, Gavin went straight to the Port Street. After spending some money to inquire, he learned that Coben had left here 3 days ago. It is said that he boarded the ship with a team of mercenaries, and no one knows where he went. Gavin was helpless and planned to go back to the hotel to prepare medicine. When he passed by Old John's tavern, he met an acquaintance, Luca, whom he had treated before. Chapter 29 Golden Fleece. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At Luca's invitation, the two entered the pub and planned to have a drink. Gavin also planned to learn about the situation outside to make plans. After a few simple greetings and pleasantries, Gavin bluntly asked Luca about the situation in Essos. In order to decide which city-state to go to, Luca said that he didn't know much about the news on the Essos continent recently. Since he was rescued by Gavin, he has been staying in the port of Old Town to recuperate. However, because he has been in the port for a long time, he is quite familiar with the situation on the narrow sea. He advises Gavin not to travel to Essos at this time. After Gavin asked in detail, he understood how chaotic the situation on the narrow sea was now. Today's narrow sea is full of dangers. As a pirate lord, the Thorn family was unexpectedly defeated by the sudden rise of the new pirate king, the Black Shark Earl. With no choice, the Thorn family had no choice but to lead the remaining fleet back to Lys. At this time, the Black Shark Earl is sparing no effort to eliminate the remaining power of the Thorn family on the Stepstone Islands, causing the area to fall into extreme chaos. Merchant ships that once only had to pay tolls could travel safely, but now they are attacked for no reason. The merchants are all in danger, and the trade routes of the Stepstone Islands have become in danger. Not only that, the ambitious Black Shark Earl also conflicted with the Dornish people. The two sides have fought many times for control of the western part of the Stepstone Islands. Any ship passing there may be sunk. This fierce conflict is still going on and may not be calmed down in a short time, because the war is currently raging around the Stepstone Islands. Ships setting off from Old Town to Essos at this time are very rare and extremely risky. Luca suggested to Gavin that if he must go to the continent of Essos, the best way is to go to King's Landing, and from there, take a boat to Pentos, which can effectively avoid the war. As an important capital city in Westeros, King's Landing has frequent ship traffic at its port, and the royal fleet has long-term cruises, so the route to Pentos is relatively safe and stable. After listening to Luca's explanation, Gavin couldn't help but ponder. If he went from Old Town to King's Landing, it would probably take nearly 2 months. Normally, it only takes 2 months to take a boat from Old Town to Tyrosi, the nearest destination in the Essos continent. This means that choosing to go to King's Landing and then to Essos is not only a tortuous journey, but also consumes more time and energy. Gavin frowned, silently weighing the pros and cons of the two routes in his mind. Soon, Gavin made a decision. He looked at Luca and asked, although there are few ships departing from the Old Town, there are still some. Can you help me contact some ships that are about to leave? As he said, he neatly took out a few coins from his pocket. Jean Long made a few clang sounds and placed it firmly on the table. Yes, of course there is. Because of the war on the Stepstone Islands, any ship that transports goods to the other side can now earn 10 times more profit than before. Naturally, there are many desperados. Luca said excitedly. He said, with greed in his eyes. He put the golden dragon on the table into his pocket. Gavin asked the waiter for paper and pen, quickly wrote down the address of his hotel, and then handed it to Luca. Come here and find me if you have any news. If I'm not here, leave a message for me through the hotel waiter. I'll pay you a sum of money after the incident is completed. Don't worry, Luca will bring you good news soon. Luca said excitedly, his voice trembled slightly with excitement, and his eyes were full of eagerness to take action. After returning to the hotel, Gavin started preparing materials. Unexpectedly, he saw Luca the next morning. Luca's face was full of joy and he said excitedly, I found out about a merchant ship that is willing to set off, but their destination is Reese, and they will not set off until 5 days later. What do you think? If possible, I will take you there. Go meet the owner of the merchant ship. Gavin silently calculated the time, and it took 3 or 4 days to prepare all the materials in advance. He directly agreed, okay, I won't go see you. You can go talk to the other party. There are 2 people in total. I ask for an independent room and am willing to pay more for the boat fare. After sending Luca away, Gavin and I immediately returned to the house and started working. 5 days later, Gavin and the Blood Dragon Guard boarded a merchant ship called the Golden Fleece. Considering that both Gavin and the Blood Dragon Guard were wearing lightweight leather armor at sea, the textures on the leather armor were delicate and exquisite, shimmering in the sunlight. Each of them carried a sword. Gavin's sword hilt was inlaid with gems, and the scabbard was exquisitely carved with patterns. In addition to the sword, Gavin also carried a bow bag in his hand. In order to prevent accidents, 5 hard bows were specially prepared for use in battle. Gavin stood on the boat with the Blood Dragon Guard, looking solemnly towards Old Town. The Blood Dragon guard carried a large box behind him, which contained potions and ritual materials carefully prepared by Gavin. At this time, the Old Town looked quiet and mysterious in the early morning sunshine. The golden sunlight shines on the ancient buildings and winding streets, creating charming light and shadow. The rolling hills in the distance, connected with the blue sky, look like a grand picture. The sea breeze blew gently, bringing a salty breath, and the waves slapped the side of the ship, making a crisp sound. The merchant ship set sail slowly. Gavin took one last look at the Old Town, then turned around, facing the sea breeze, and walked towards the cabin, but met the owner of the ship at the cabin door. "I didn't expect it to be you, Sir Gavin. I am the owner of this ship. My name is Frank Brown." The speaker was a middle-aged man, wearing an exquisite robe, with emerald buttons glowing warmly in the sun. Wearing a huge gemstone ring on his hand, it showed his wealth, and he had a well-placed smile on his lips. Gavin was curious when he heard the other party's name. He bowed slightly and asked, "Hello, Mr. Frank, do you seem to know me?" Frank laughed heartily and said, "Sir Gavin, I had the honor to watch your competition in Highgarden before, and later I heard that you were canonized as a knight. It is really an honor for you to board my ship this time. I must have with a master like you accompanying me, I don't have to worry about the safety of this trip. I wonder if I will be lucky enough to invite you to lunch later." After hearing this, Gavin smiled and said, "I am very honored to receive your invitation. Please allow me to put my luggage in the cabin first. I will wait until noon and I will be on time for the appointment." Frank nodded and said, "That's natural, Sir Gavin. I'm waiting for your arrival in the captain's cabin. Please give me more recommendation votes and support." Chapter 30, Invading Pirates. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At noon, Gavin arrived at the appointment on time. While chatting with Frank, Captain Hassan and others, he also learned the specific plan of the voyage. Due to Frank's recent agreement with the governor of Reese, the goods must be delivered to Reese within 3 months, otherwise he may have his family property purchased and Reese confiscated, resulting in bankruptcy. He had no choice but to embark on this voyage. According to Captain Hassan's opinion, after they pass through the summer sea, they will try their best to circumnavigate the Dorne Broken Arm area to avoid the area where the conflict is taking place. Then the ship will sail south and go straight to the destination. Do not replenish fresh water on any island in the Stepstones. To this end, the ship reserves 3 times as much water and food as the previous voyage, but it is far away from familiar routes and may also pass through unfamiliar waters with frequent storms. At night, Gavin lay in the shaking cabin, hearing the sound of waves lapping against the side of the ship and the sound of wood creaking. His thoughts wandered in the darkness, thinking about the dangers he might encounter on this journey. An enhanced strength is his greatest capital. As long as he is strong enough, he has the confidence and ability to deal with everything. He opened the panel and added the 3 points of energy obtained from the Heartbreaker sword to the bow and arrow, raising both skills to master level. Host, Gavin Bellerys. Age, 15. Bloodline, Bloodfire Dragonborn. Development 33% Valyria's Dragon King Bloodline, Mastering Dragons and Controlling Fire. Initially awakened. Rule, 1/33, your slaves can be promoted through the panel. 1 Intermediate Blood Dragon. Guard, Blood Witch Puppet made using Dragon Bloodline can be advanced twice. Skill, Fire Manipulation, Master, Swordsmanship, Master, Flame Blade, Master, Bow and Arrow, Master. Spear, Mastery, Energy Points, 0, obtained by automatically absorbing magic power floating around, or actively absorbing magic power. After seeing that the energy points were cleared again, Gavin became a little anxious for the dragon bones. He planned to see if he could buy some after arriving in Lys, or wait until he became stronger and go directly to explore the dragon lair in Bellerys. There would definitely be no shortage of dragon bones there. In the days that followed, Gavin's ship, the Golden Fleece, sailed peacefully on the summer sea. The vast sea is like a huge piece of blue silk, with gentle ripples caressed by the breeze. The sky is as blue as a gem, with white clouds floating in it like cotton candy. The sun shines on the sea, and the golden light shines brightly. Flocks of seagulls circled and flew around the ship. Their calls were clear and sweet, adding a bit of vitality to the tranquil sea. However, as the ship gradually moved away from the mainland, the seabirds gradually disappeared, leaving only the occasional fish jumping out of the water. Their scales reflected colorful light in the sun. Gavin even found a fishing rod and sat leisurely on the side of the boat every day to fish, enjoying this rare quiet time. On this day, Gavin was still fishing on the side of the boat with a fishing rod. Suddenly, he saw 3 blurry black figures appearing on the sea level in the distance. Gavin was full of doubts at first, staring closely at the approaching black figures, until it became clearer and his true appearance was gradually revealed. They were 3 black long ships, sailing menacingly towards the Golden Fleece. At this time, the sailor on the lookout pole looked horrified and sounded the alarm. Dang! 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 The rapid ringing of the bell instantly broke the calm on the ship, and the entire merchant ship was in chaos. The sailors ran and shouted in panic, the tools they held were discarded casually, and the sound of collisions was endless. Captain Hassan rushed out of the room with an angry face and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Don't panic. Get ready to fight." That the crew heard the captain's order and hurriedly picked up their weapons. Some couldn't find their swords in the rush, and some took the harpoon by mistake. The scene was chaotic. Frank also came to the deck with a pale face at this time and stood closely with the captain. Looking at the black shadow getting closer and closer, Frank's lips trembled and he kept praying, "Never be a pirate, never be a pirate." At this time, Gavin also walked over quickly, looked at Frank who was shaking first, and then looked at Captain Hassan who was still calm, and asked, "If they are really pirates, can we turn to avoid them now? After all, it's still far away." The captain frowned, looking at the approaching black shadow, and said in a deep voice, "It's too late, the wind direction is not good for us, turning will only make us more passive, and our ship is sinking. Opposite is a long ship that is known for its speed." "But..." Gavin looked solemn, "Then we can only fight. We have no chance of winning." Frank listened to their conversation, his body trembled even more, and his voice was crying, "What should I do, my goods, my family?" Gavin patted Frank on the shoulder and comforted, "Don't panic, if we really fight, we may not lose." Gavin quickly returned to his cabin, and with the help of the Blood Dragon Guard, he quickly put on his leather armor, prepared his weapons, and held the longbow tightly in his hand to prepare for the next battle. But it turns out that the naval battle is far from what Gavin imagined. As the 3 ships got closer and closer, Gavin could clearly see the ferocious ballistas on the bows of the other ships and the ferocious faces of the pirates. The sea breeze howled, making the flags rustle, and Gavin's heart tightened more and more with the tense atmosphere. The other party's ships kept approaching, at extremely fast speeds, and surrounded the Golden Fleece, but they did not pick up the ship. After communicating with Hassan, Gavin also learned that the other party's flag represented the recently rising pirate king Black Shark Earl, but he didn't know whether he led the team himself or his men. Gavin held the longbow tightly in his hand and silently calculated the range. Suddenly, a pirate longship that took a detour fired a crossbow with a rope, hitting the right side of the Golden Fleece. Then, another pirate ship also fired a crossbow with a rope into the port side of the Golden Fleece. After 2 crossbows, the pirate ships did not make any other moves, but the other pirates kept waving flags at the Golden Fleece on the lookout pole. The flag fluttered in the wind, like a devil's grin. Gavin's eyes became more fierce, and he cursed in his heart, "Damn it, the range of the flaming arrow is not enough. If you just use a bow and arrow, you can reach it, but it is undoubtedly a death sentence to shoot against the crossbow. I am afraid that the Blood Dragon Guards cannot withstand the power." Gavin stared at the constantly changing flag signals, and he could only look at Hassan, who was serious and frowning beside him. Frank paced anxiously, muttering, "What should I do? It's over, it's completely over." The sea breeze became more and more fierce, blowing everyone's clothes rustling, and at this time, the Golden Fleece seemed to be tightly grasped by a pair of invisible claws.